Listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Welcome to Around Our Area, a weekly look at community newspapers from around Western New York. Your reader for this hour is Bruce. We're going to start out with the Amherst Bee from January 1st of 2026. And we're doing the Year in Review 2025 by Amy Wallace. 2025 brought several major changes to the town of Amherst, including a heated election and primary, changes to plans for the former Westwood Country Club property, a library renaming, and fees for popular summer festivals. We put together the top stories of the year in chronological order. Music on Main, Glen Park Arts Fest fees. Questions are still swirling about the decision by the Village of Williamsville's mayor to charge fees for the mayor's permit for Music on Main and change how fees are handled for the Glen Park Art Festival. Williamsville Mayor Christine Hunt began collecting fees for the mayor's permit this year for Music on Main. The fees range from $500 to $1,000 for businesses participating in Music on Main. Hunt is also now charging $75 per artist to participate in the Glen Park Art Festival. Village fees have been part of the code for many years, long before I became mayor, Hunt said. The fees for the village collects go toward the general operating expenses of the village in support of village residents. Hunt explained that when she became mayor, she realized that certain fees were not being collected. Upon being elected mayor, I believe all village businesses and event organizations paid for the permits, the mayor's permits and otherwise, to operate in the village, Hunt said. I learned that they did not and set out to correct this for the village residents. I began working on this in 2023, and through negotiations, the agreed fees were implemented for 2025. However, president of the Glen Park Art Festival, Gina Nasca, told the Bee that the council has paid a one-time mayor's permit fee every year of the festival since its inception in 2010, and this is the first year that the mayor changed it to charge each individual artist $75 instead. It's unfair and unrealistic to charge these starving artists this fee, Nasca said, adding that the Glen Park Art Festival Council is a 501c3 nonprofit and part of the Village Preservation Foundation. We tried to work with the mayor on an alternative. We offered a donation of new benches for the park, but the mayor declined. We tried to negotiate, and we weren't met with anything but resistance from the mayor. We've had people drop out because they can't afford the fee. Nasca said she wasn't sure what the future of the Glen Park Art Festival in Williamsville will be with these fees. Willowdale Park. After over a decade of sitting vacant and recent years of planning for the former Westwood Country Club site on North Forest Road to become Amherst Central Park, Erie County has announced that the county will actually be taking over the site. This is going to be something wonderful for the entire community, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz said at a press conference on April 23rd. Not just the town of Amherst, but all of Erie County. We've known for quite some time that there was a plan, a very ambitious plan, by Supervisor Brian Culpa to take this whole Westwood Country Club site and turn it into Amherst Central Park. Poloncarz said the plan is to restore the original 9-hole Willowdale Country Club golf course, along with creating a passive park with walking trails, wildlife viewing, benches, restrooms, a food truck and vendor area, the inclusive playground, and future winter market. The 171-acre former Westwood Country Club and golf course has been the center of debate for years, with some residents fighting through legal action and petitions to prevent what was planned to be a large park similar to New York City's Central Park, with a cultural center, theater, museum, and more. Poloncarz was joined by Culpa, Erie County legislator Jeannie Vinal, and others at the press conference. The park will be renamed Willowdale Park after the original Willowdale Country Club that was housed on the site. Distraction-free school zones. When students headed back to the classroom on Tuesday, September 2nd, they did so without something that has typically been attached to them at the hip, or more accurately, their fingertips, their smartphone. As part of the 2025-26 New York State budget, Governor Kathy Hochul set aside money and established required bell-to-bell restrictions on smartphones and internet-enabled devices in K-12 schools. Hochul developed and enacted the initiative based on feedback from teachers, parents, and students. Under the new regulations taking effect this school year, school districts across New York developed their own policy for restricting smartphones. In the Williamsville Central School District, their policy states that students are generally prohibited from using internet-enabled devices, including smartphones, tablets, and smartwatches, during the school day anywhere on school grounds. However, students may be authorized to use an internet-enabled device during the school day on school grounds if authorized by a teacher, principal, or the district for the specific educational purpose. Where necessary for the management of a student's health care, in the event of an emergency at the direction of a building administrator, and for translation services. On a case-by-case basis, upon review and determination by a school psychologist, school social worker, or school counselor for a student caregiver who is routinely responsible for the care and well-being of a family member, or where required by law. Students must be permitted to use an internet-enabled device where the use is included in the student's Individualized Education Program, IED, or Section 504 plan. Students must store their internet-enabled devices in designated on-site storage areas during the school day. On-site storage areas may include student lockers, teacher-designated storage system, elementary, or secure storage areas in the school's main office. The designated on-site storage areas must be easily accessible to students and provide adequate security to ensure the safe keeping of the students' devices. The district will communicate the procedure for storing and retrieving devices, ensuring that students understand their responsibilities in using the on-site storage facilities provided. To accommodate necessary communications, parents or guardians may use the following methods to contact their students during school hours while adhering to this policy. Parents or persons in parental relation may call the school's main office, and the office staff can relay messages to the student or call the student to the office to speak with their parent or person in parental relation. We have truly had a great start to the school year, Williamsville Schools Superintendent Darren Brow Hall stated in his district update. I want to commend and thank our parents and guardians, students, faculty, and staff for smooth implementation of the distraction-free school zones policy. As shared at our previous Board of Education meeting, throughout the district, the results have been extremely positive. No Kings protests. In April and again in October, large groups of residents joined nationwide No Kings protest to protest the Trump administration and its policies. At the October protest, approximately 2,000 people lined both sides of Main Street in the village of Williamsville to participate in the protest. 2025 election. The Democrats held out to control of the Amherst supervisor and 2 town board seats, with Sean Lavin winning the supervisor race against Republican challenger Dan Gagliardo. I am honored and humbled by the trust demonstrated by the residents of the town of Amherst, Lavin said, On election night, November 4th, I'm so pleased that our message resonated with voters, that they support more parks and green space, more and better police and highway services, and responsible development within our town. According to the Erie County Board of Elections, Lavin received 53% of the vote over Gagliardo's 47%, with 100% of precincts reporting. Lavin received 16,383 votes, with 100% reporting over Gagliardo's 14,509. I cannot express every single person who has helped me along the way, Gagliardo said in his concession speech Tuesday night. It has been the most humbling experience of my life. This can't be it. We have to go forward and make sure we get it in the next time around. 2 new Democrats will join the all-Democratic town board after John B. Davis received 28% of the vote and Jack Kavanaugh received 27% of the vote over Republicans John Trabert with 23% and Mary Dormer with 22% of the vote, with 100% of precincts reporting. Davis will be the first black town board member in the town's history. I'm honored to serve the people of Amherst, Davis said. The grassroots campaign connected with residents because it focused on services, transparency, accountability, and progress. Becoming the first African American elected to the town board is a reflection of the inclusive community Amherst truly is. I'm grateful for the trust voters placed in me, and I'm committed to leading with integrity and purpose. Renaming Amherst Main Library at Audubon. The town of Amherst took a big step in honoring diversity on December 8th when the Amherst Town Board unanimously voted to rename the main library after the honorary Shirley Chisholm. Amherst Councilwoman Angela Marinucci sponsored the revolution to rename the Amherst Main Library at Audubon after former U.S. Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, who was the first woman of color to be elected to Congress and to run for president. The town board voted to rename the Amherst Main Library at Audubon as the Honorable Shirley Chisholm Library, following a public hearing on the renaming. The decision was met with some resistance, but mainly supported by the community. The board was not required to hold a public hearing to rename a town-owned building. Chisholm lived in Amherst for a time after retiring from Congress. The Clarence Bee, Thursday, January 1st, 2026. Clarence's salt supply solid. Buy American provision suspended. Just under a year ago, Western New York was hit with a road salt shortage that left Clarence relying on the stockpile in its salt barn and various town rationing salt or adding other materials to stretch their salt supply. This year, a requirement for municipalities to purchase U.S. mined salt has been put on hold, and the town of Clarence has been able to refresh its stockpile with 500-plus tons of Canadian mined salt, according to Superintendent of Highways James Dussing. Ships are bringing salt to the Port of Buffalo until the lake freezes, Dussing said, carrying about 25 tons each, and the town of Clarence saved approximately $15 per ton by ordering its salt early enough to get the price of the prior year's contract. A solid supply of salt is always necessary during Western New York's unpredictable winters, and Dussing suspects that this snowy season could be fairly cold and busy. My expectations, based on nothing but my own personal thoughts, are that we get the same or close amount of precipitation in a calendar year. It either comes in as rain or snow. My guess is with the hot, dry summer we had in 2025, Mother Nature will try and balance things out in the form of snow, he told the Bee. Clarence is currently well stocked with salt, but if it snows daily and a frozen lake cuts off shipments through the Port of Buffalo, the salt supply could eventually run low. The Highway Department is keeping a close watch on its stockpile, and there are already plans in case the supply runs low at any point. For example, the town's plows are able to use liquid de-icer, and if all else fails, there are messier last resort options like mixing sand in with the salt, which would keep the roads safe in a pinch but would require a lot of spring cleanup. Although there is a pause on the Buy American requirement blamed for last year's salt shortage, Dussing said he is unaware of any new legislation to modify New York State's Buy American Salt Act, which is the source of the requirement. The Buy American requirement was intended to stop downstate municipalities from buying South American salt, but in practice cut off Canadian mined salt and gave one company a monopoly on Western New York salt supply. Various highway superintendents advocated to amend the legislation to allow all North American salt, but Dussing said he is not aware of any new legislation to modify the current law. The Buy American Salt Act prioritizes U.S. mined salt, but allows the purchase of foreign salt when there isn't enough domestic salt to go around, or if domestic salt is significantly more expensive or of an unsatisfactory quality. Town Lions receive grant to support inclusive playground. The town of Clarence, in partnership with the Clarence Lions Club, has received $675,000 in grant money for the Lions Inclusive Playground project through the state's Regional Economic Development Council initiative. The Lions are in the midst of fundraising for this jungle-themed playground, which will go above and beyond ADA requirements to provide a place for kids of all abilities to play together. The playground will be at Town Place Park, 5400 Goodrich Road, between the baseball field and Lions Den Pavilion. Alongside the ramps and special swings typically associated with accessible playgrounds, the inclusive playground will have plenty of items for kids of varying physical abilities and sensory needs. The Lions are hoping for a summer 2026 build date. Visit www.clarencelions.org/CLIP, CLIPP, to learn more about the playground. Funding from the Regional Economic Development Council initiative came to more than $2.8 million in the 60th Senate District, according to Senator Patrick Gallivan's office, and $463 million across New York State. Other grants in Gallivan's district included Town of Lancaster $375,000 to install a safe, accessible, and engaging splash pad at Westwood Park with active water features for children and a mist tent for seniors and adults. The project is located near populations vulnerable to extreme heat, including low-income neighborhoods, senior centers, and people with disabilities. Village of Lancaster, $310,492 to install solar panels on the roof of the Department of Public Works building to generate clean energy and reduce operational costs. The project is one component of the village's larger goal to increase renewable energy adoption. Town of Evans, $356,250 to complete architectural and engineering work for major infrastructure and public space upgrades at Sturgeon Point Marina. The project includes design of a new amphitheater, park promenade, and picnic overlook, as well as improvements to integral roads, parking, and lighting at the Lake Erie waterfront site. Town of Hamburg, $100,000 to complete an assessment of multimodal infrastructure and develop conceptual designs focused on multimodal access, connectivity, and safety along Lake Shore Road from Hamburg Beach to the Lake Erie Seaway Trail Center. This project will support local businesses through the completion of a targeted market study and implement the town's local waterfront revitalization program. Springville Center for the Arts, $673,000 to create artist workspaces and preserve the historic buildings at 67 through 69 East Main Street in Springville. The structures date from 1895 and 1907 and feature prominently on the corner of Springville's historic district. Town of Brant, $334,719 to improve facilities at its only municipal park to support youth and community sports programs and increase park usage. Improvements will include 2 new baseball diamonds, upgrades to the football field, and replacement of the septic system for the existing restroom. The state's regional approach to economic development allows local leaders to identify projects that support local businesses, improve recreational opportunities, and enhance the quality of life for residents and visitors. Gallivan said, "I congratulate the regional stakeholders who helped develop these proposals to meet the needs of their communities." From the Cheektowaga Bee, Year in Review 2025, article by Michael Pulse. 2025 consisted of a tense election, several large-scale community events, and celebrations, battles over the town budget, honoring the legacy of some of Cheektowaga's most influential people, and much more. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything that's happened in a year, so here's a list of some of the most important, memorable moments from 2025 in chronological order. Conversations regarding the 2026 town budget and taxes begin to take place. At the first town board meeting of the year, the council members already had their sights set on the 2026 budget. 2 resolutions were introduced, which directly countered one another, both concerning the budget and taxes. The Democrats introduced a resolution to potentially increase the tax levy. That was defeated. The Republicans introduced a resolution to find a 1% reduction in the budget from last year. That one passed. Cheektowaga loses 2 esteemed public servants. Council member and Deputy Supervisor Jerry Kaminsky, 82, passed away in the afternoon of Tuesday, January 28, 2025. Supervisor Brian Nowak shared the news during a town board work session. Kaminsky was on the Cheektowaga Town Board representing the Democratic Caucus since 2012. He was born and raised in Cheektowaga and lived here with his wife Kathy and sons Jerry Jr. and Jamie. Kaminsky also operated a successful trucking equipment business called Kaminsky & Sons. Also lifelong Cheektowaga resident and former town historian Maureen Gleason passed away at age 66 on Monday, January 20th of 2025. Gleason was a life force in Cheektowaga. The many people she crossed paths with have described her as dedicated, involved, passionate, hardworking, compassionate, selfless, and inquisitive. The Cheektowaga Republican Committee endorses election candidates. The Cheektowaga Republican Committee took to social media on February 10, 2025, to reveal the 4 candidates they had endorsed to run for the town board. Former town supervisor Diane Benchikowski, incumbents Anthony Filipski and Michael Jasinski, and former highway superintendent Mark Wegner. Both Benchikowski and Wegner were previously affiliated with the Democratic Party. The Cheektowaga Democratic Committee endorses election candidates. The Cheektowaga Democrat Committee announced their endorsement for the Cheektowaga Town Board. The committee endorsed incumbent Brian Pilarski and first-time candidates Monica Eldricken, Tiffany Lewis, and Stephen Nowicki. Cleveland Hill Superintendent John McSwain announces retirement. John McSwain, who was the Cleveland Hill superintendent for 14 years, announced his plans to retire at the end of the school year. McSwain dedicated 33 years to education. He started off his career teaching elementary, middle school, and high school special education. After that, he was an assistant principal at Williamsville East High School and the principal of West Seneca West Senior High School for 8.5 years. Former supervisor appointed council member. The town of Cheektowaga Republican Caucus sponsored a resolution to appoint former supervisor Diane Benchikowski as council member at a special meeting on Friday, February 21st. Benchikowski said she wasn't planning on joining the board so soon, even with plans to run in the November election. However, when the seat opened up due to Jerry Kaminsky's passing, she was asked to fill it. Board passes resolution for new TCEA contract. The Town of Cheektowaga Employees Association, TCEA, was out of contract at the end of 2023. The association was in mediation and negotiations for 2024 and 2025, and they finally came to an agreement after 15 months without a contract in April of 2025. Cheektowaga undergoes spending freeze. Finances, taxes, and the town budget were a big topic of discussion for the first few months of 2025 in Cheektowaga. Republican and Democratic board members seemed to have different ideas when it came to the topic of how to steer the town moving forward. In January, Supervisor Brian Nowak spoke about raising taxes for the 2026 budget to accommodate rising costs. This was met with pushback from the Republican caucus on the board, who instead passed a resolution stating that all town departments find a 1% reduction in their respective budgets. At a town board meeting on April 8th, the board's then Republican majority passed a resolution to put a freeze on most spending to help fix the town's budget. Cheektowaga lifts spending freeze, appoints comptroller. After pressing pause on town spending just 2 weeks before, the Cheektowaga Town Board reversed course, voting at a board meeting on April 22nd to lift the freeze and move forward with a new plan for fiscal accountability, one that included a full-time comptroller. The board passed a resolution to appoint Dennis R. Dombrowski of Cheektowaga's new comptroller. Dombrowski, a Cheektowaga resident, was chosen after a competitive hiring process. Cheektowaga Schools passed budget. The Cleveland Hill Board of Education approved their proposed $44,057,501 2025-2026 school year budget, reflecting a 7.57% increase from the 2024-2025 approved budget. The Maryville Board of Education approved their proposed $63,478,832 budget for the school year, reflecting a 5.89% increase. The Cheektowaga Central Board of Education approved their proposed $67,947,783 budget for the school year, reflecting a 8.87% increase. The Cheektowaga Sloan School District approved their proposed $42,901,087 budget for the school year, reflecting a 4.25% increase. Former students celebrate retired Maryville music teacher's 85th birthday. More than 150 former students gathered at Maryville High School on May 3rd to honor retired choral director and teacher William E. Rogers III with a surprise concert in celebration of his 85th birthday. alumni traveled from across the country to perform in the commemorative event and rekindle with Rogers. Cleveland Hill UFSD appoints new district superintendent. The Cleveland Hill Union appointed David Evans as its new superintendent of schools. A leader within the district, Evans brings decades of dedication to education and a strong commitment to student success. Evans has held various significant roles within Cleveland Hill UFSD. Cheektowaga celebrates Memorial Day. On Memorial Day, the town of Cheektowaga once again paused to honor the sacrifices of those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. The day's observations began at the Frank L. Gierlach Post. The morning commenced at 9 a.m. with Mass at St. Andrew's Church, followed by a remembrance ceremony at the post's flagpole and monument. At 11:30 a.m., the Cheektowaga Veterans Affairs Committee hosted a second ceremony at Cheektowaga Town Park. The final event of the day took place at 1 p.m. at the F.J. Donovan Post. The ceremony also included a flagpole and monument observance. 200-person party sparks debate about short-term rentals. Town of Cheektowaga residents discussed their disapproval over short-term rental properties during the Town of Cheektowaga board meeting on Tuesday, June 10th, after a chaotic party was held at one in their neighborhood. One resident, Wally Carriero, said police were called to Dick Road, which is the street he lives on, to deal with a party people were having at an Airbnb rental property. He said there were 200 people between the ages of 18 and 21 on the property, and they were parked illegally. People were also illegally parking at the Cheektowaga Veterinary Hospital and Tag Jewelry and Coin Inc., which are two facilities located on Dick Road. Some of the other highlights from the year in review for Cheektowaga. Cheektowaga hosts the 45th annual Polish-American Arts Festival. There was also the Cheektowaga holds their annual Independence Day Parade. Middle school students throw surprise farewell celebration for beloved resource officer. Former police chief passes away, leaving behind an illustrious legacy. Bruce Chamberlain, a former chief of police for the Cheektowaga Police Department, passed away on June 29th at the age of 80, but his illustrious legacy will surely live on. Director of Senior Services retires. A new face takes the role. Carrie Peak, who served as the town of Cheektowaga's Director of Senior Services since 2006, retired from her position, leaving behind a legacy of hard work, determination, and senior care. Dawn Belair, who has been holding the position of Recreation Supervisor for Senior Services, took the reins as director after Peak's retirement. The annual Buffalo German Fest held at Town Park. Volunteers come together to raise neglected veterans' grave markers. Supervisor Nowak proposes 2026 budget. The Walls of Honor return to Cheektowaga. Democrats take back control of the town board after sweeping the election. Veterans Day ceremony held at Town Park. St. Aloysius Gonzaga Church holds 82nd Annual Christmas Fair. And alumni join students for Christmas concert. The Lancaster Bee and the Depew Bee from Thursday, January 1st, 2026. Top story, retired DPW Superintendent Dick Bullman dies at 90. Article by Mary Jo Monin. Lancaster lost another member of its old guard following the death of Dick Bowman Sr. on Christmas Day, 2025. The lifelong village resident died in the Erie County Medical Center following complications from a fall 9 days earlier in his townhouse. Dick was a fiercely active volunteer in the community, but will be best remembered for a 40-year career at the Lancaster Village Department of Public Works from 1953 to 1993. He began in high school as a part-time laborer. He earned degrees from Erie County Technical Institute and Empire State College. He worked his way up through the DPW, becoming assistant superintendent and eventually replacing the revered Harold Huber as superintendent in 1973. He especially remembered being in charge during the blizzard of '77 and working constantly to keep the main drags open. During his years at the DPW, he worked with the following village mayors: Howard Benson, from 54 to 72, Urban Rosler, 73 to 1997, Bert Lyon, 77 to 85, Ron Hadsall, 85 to 89, and Art Puzluzny from 89 to 93. Dick was a gifted engineer who had a kind word for all and leaves many friends. "I've known him since I was 12, said Mayor Bill Schroeder. He was one of the kindest and most knowledgeable people I've ever met. His passing is a true loss to not only his family and friends, but to the village of Lancaster. He will be happily remembered and sadly missed. Born in 1935, Dick came to Lancaster as a little boy. His mother died when he was 6 years old from cancer. The family lived along Cayuga Creek at the end of Coons Alley, later renamed E. Garfield. Town Hall was clearly visible from their backyard. He remembered hopping 2 fences to get to school on Aurora Street. The Bowmans lived on the bank of the creek before the flood control project, the dikes, were constructed in 1946. Dick remembered after one bad storm, Cayuga Creek flooded its banks on a small green bridge from the Lancaster Country Club, and a hen house with a rooster on top came roaring down the creek. Dick was a proud graduate of the Lancaster High School class of 1954 and was a regular attendee at the annual all-classes reunions at Ripa's restaurant. He served with the United States Naval Construction Battalion, Seabees, during the Korean War as a petty officer 3rd class surveyor. At the time of his death, Dick was an active member and past commander of the American Legion Depew Post 1528 and first vice commander of AMVETS Post 7275. He most recently attended the post-sponsored November 11th Veterans Day services at St. John Lutheran Church in Depew. Dick married the former Rose Damiani in 1957, raising 3 children, Richard Jr., Robert, and Allison, on Wildwood Drive. The couple was married 64 years before Rose's passing on June 30th, 2021. On October 4th of this year, Dick's family threw a 90th birthday party for him and 90 of his closest friends at Ripa's restaurant. Dick was also a longtime member of the Lancaster Elks Lodge 1478 and a 65-year member of the Lancaster Fire Department, having joined the Citizens Hose Company in 1960. The fire department attended Dick's wake as a group at the Wendell Loescher Funeral Home, wearing their full Class A uniforms. Dick was a founding member of the Lancaster Planning Commission, formed in the early 1970s after Lancaster's urban renewal. He served as chairman for years and stepped down just 2 to 3 years ago as his vision began to fail. He could look at a map and tell you how the water was going to flow from a mile away, said Jim Aline, who replaced Dick as Planning Commission chairman. When I took over for him, I knew I had some big shoes to fill. In 2024, Dick received a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Lancaster-Depew-Alma Chamber of Commerce. During his tenure at the DPW, Dick oversaw many projects that changed the landscape of the village. Some of these projects include the Lancaster Water Tower, development of the Lancaster Towers, and development of the DPW building on Broadway. After the funeral mass at St. Mary's on Monday, Dick was laid to rest next to his beloved Rose in the St. Mary's Cemetery. You are listening to Around Our Area on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 40 after the hour. Town awarded $375,000 for a splash pad at Westwood Park. Article by James Sinner. The state will provide $375,000 in grant funding to the town of Lancaster to install a safe and engaging splash pad at Westwood Park. The project will offer features for children and misting tents for seniors and adults. In total, the project's current estimated cost is roughly $700,000, but that number could change depending on project bids received. We felt like Westwood Park would be a good place for a cooling center, said Councilmember Dawn Schroeder, who sits on the town's in-house grant writing committee. The park itself is very well trafficked. She added that Westwood Park is a great place where people converge, and the cooling station will benefit both adults and kids. If there was this cooling center, adults and kids can cool down after games, Schroeder said. Cindy Maciejewski and I found that there were a lot of seniors that live near the park, too. In total, Schroeder said that roughly 1,200 people use the park per week in the summer. And it really isn't treed, if you think about, she said, highlighting that much of the park is wide open without the benefit of a forest canopy to cool things down. Schroeder added that grant opportunities like these come from the diligence of their in-house grant writing committee, comprised of town employee Cindy Maciejewski, Schroeder, and Director of Finance Nick Swanson. In total, the town saves around $30,000 per year by not outsourcing their grant writing work. I made the decision that our grant writers weren't working out, said Supervisor Bob Leary, discussing his choice to move away from outsourcing grant applications. What we did was set up our own grant writing system in the town. He added, the committee, write the grants out, and then we worked out a program with the county's ECIDA. So instead of paying for grant writing services per se, they do a final approval of our grants at a cost of $75 per hour. Each grant, we probably pay an hour or two. Leary said that he's excited for a new splash pad. It cleans the water, so we don't have to keep using fresh water in there, making it very energy efficient while saving on water usage. The State Regional Economic Development Council's grant program will deliver $463 million in their next round of funding. The state's regional approach to economic development allows local leaders to identify projects that support local businesses, improve recreational opportunities, and enhance the quality of life for residents and visitors, said State Senator Patrick Gallivan. I congratulate the regional stakeholders who helped develop these proposals to meet the needs of their communities. Also part of the REDC funding, $310,492 will be provided to the Village of Lancaster to install solar panels on the roof of the DPW building in an effort to generate clean energy and reduce operating costs. The Bee Editorial. New Year, New You. Time is a strange thing. The clock ticks on, the days pass by, and before you know it, another year is gone. The day we flip our calendars to January is meaningful, mainly because we've collectively agreed it is. In fact, as recently as Shakespearean-era London, the new year wasn't until the Feast of the Annunciation on March 25th, and many cultures have New Year celebrations other than January 1st. Regardless, there's something motivating about the changing of the calendar. It may be the same thing that makes Monday the only day to start a diet for so many people. It's a fresh start, a clean slate, a blank page, or whatever other idioms you'd like to use. It feels like anything is possible, and the ambition to follow through on your goals is perhaps at its strongest. As in the past, we're strong proponents of the practice of picking a New Year theme instead of New Year's resolutions. To borrow some reasoning from the YouTube channel CGP Grey, it replaces the pass-fail dichotomy with a general move toward the kind of person you'd like to be. It guides your decisions throughout the year, and it's a lot more flexible than traditional resolutions if life throws you a curveball. But we're also the opinion that, to quote James Clear's Atomic Habits, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Clear has a lot of little tips and tricks to establish and maintain habits, but he boils them down to this: make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. If you declare a year of health, that involves more exercise, for example. Leaving your equipment in the basement where it's covered in laundry or tucked away in boxes is a recipe for failure. Instead, make it obvious and easy by putting it in a room you use often. Make it attractive by picking a favorite TV show, podcast, or music playlist that you're only allowed to listen to while exercising. And make it satisfying by giving yourself some sort of reward at the end, or even by picking a form of exercise you find particularly enjoyable. For some, this means dance exercise videos or dog walking instead of treadmill time. Whatever your goals or themes for the year, we hope that this new year will bring you growth and happiness. Happy New Year from all of us at the Bee. Out of the past, 92 years ago, Thursday, December 28th of 1933, hold up staged on Westwood Road. Aided by a young girl who acted as a lookout, 3 men Saturday night held up and robbed William A. Stratton as he was driving from Lancaster to his home on Westwood Road. The local resident turned from Peppermint Road into Westwood Road when the 4 youthful bandits, riding in a yellow coupe, drew up and waved him to the side of the highway. Believing something was wrong, Stratton pulled over to the right and stopped. As he did, the town men jumped on the running board of his car, while the third commanded him to throw up your hands. While he was covered, the pair went through his pockets and relieved him of all cash. Lancaster without liquid cheer. Lancaster, regarded years back as the largest oasis in Erie County, is just the opposite at the present time. Not even one liquor store license having been issued to any local residents since the repeal went into effect early this month. Kenmore, East Aurora, Williamsville, Hamburg, and other western New York towns all have their establishments where bottled goods are dispensed over the counter for off-premises consumption. Here, however, if anyone desires a touch of brandy for that plum pudding sauce, the ingredients for an appetizing cocktail, or a quart or two of Scotch, rye, or blended whiskey, with which to welcome the infant 1934, they are compelled to motor to Buffalo or one of the nearby towns to secure the wanted supply. 2 applications, it is understood, have been made to the board for a license, but, as yet, the necessary legal documents have not been forthcoming. In justice to Lancaster, it might be well to add that this community was never known as a liquor town, despite its 86 licensed saloons back in the old days. Beck's, Lang's, Simon's, German American, and other brews flowed freely, while bottles of Old Crow, 3-Star Hennessy, 3 Feathers, Mount Vernon, Wilson, and other brands gathered dust and cobwebs in the back of bars. You are listening to Around Our Area on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 50 past the hour. Kenton B. from Thursday, January 1st of 2026. 2025. Tylek reflects on 2025 and looks ahead to what 2026 holds. Article by Chitra Silvaraj. North Tonawanda Mayor Austin Tylek reflected on the city's progress throughout 2025, noting that several key initiatives will continue into 2026, while the new year also brings additional projects and opportunities. The year 2025 marked a historic moment for the city with the unveiling of a new official flag, replacing the previous design that had been in use since 1967. The new flag was designed by former resident Jeremy Snayateki, whose submission was selected through a community contest. His design reflects the city he grew up in, featuring local landmarks and cultural touchstones, such as the Carnegie Art Center, Melody Fair, the Riviera Theater, Haley's Comics, and more. Earlier this month, the city of North Tonawanda entered into an intermunicipal charter agreement aimed at enhancing trail connectivity and waterfront access across the three Tonawandas. The town supervisor and the mayors of the Twin Cities signed the agreement in support of Greenway Trail expansion and improved waterfront resources. The charter renews the original agreement signed in 2019, which expired after 5 years, and sets the stage for a decade of continued collaboration among the three municipalities to strengthen regional connectivity and public access to the waterfront. Tylek stated that many new businesses popped up in the city, such as Aroma, Obsidian Dream, Ironton Restaurant, and LDS Consulting, to name a few. North Tonawanda celebrated the completion of 2 renovation projects at the Westher Riviera Theater and Herschel Carousel Factory Museum as part of Governor Kathy Hochul's multi-million-dollar downtown revitalization initiative. Riviera Theater received a more than 6,000 square foot property expansion as well as renovations to existing features, including the box office, concession area, artist merchandise area, and modernizing their restrooms in compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act standards. The Herschel Carousel Museum received a restoration of its music hall, the original of which collapsed in 1995. Tylek listed several other public projects that broke ground or completed in 2025. The Sweeney Bike Path Extension was launched to enhance pedestrian safety, improve recreational access, and connect key areas of the city to the larger New York State Trail network. The city completed its comprehensive plan that looks 20 years into the horizon to chart a fresh course for sustainable and economic growth. This replaces the previous plan that was developed in 2008. The Bridge Street Landing project at 78 Bridge Street, a 3.32-acre property on Tonawanda Island, is slated to be developed into a 3-story, 100,430 square foot mixed-use development. The project will feature 73 market-rate apartment units, 7 vacation rental residences, hotel accommodations, and commercial space along the waterfront. The Twin Cities Highway Improvement Study is nearing completion, with final concepts expected to be presented to the public in the near future. Beyond major developments and initiatives, the city also placed a strong emphasis on enhancing municipal services, Tylek noted. The city replaced 1,500 sidewalk blocks, repaired 1,500 blocks, and paved 19 miles of roads. More than 100 tree-related issues, including trimming, were addressed. The city also invested in improvements to the city market parking lot and secured a $50,000 grant to fund upgraded signage, new lighting, bathroom renovations, informational boards, and enhancements to the pavilion. The city distributed $120,000 in Fresh Connect vouchers to support food access for residents. Improvements were also completed at the Live Hose Fire Hall, with a focus on much-needed floor repairs. In addition, the city continues to advance plans for a new community center that will house both the youth and recreation department and the senior center. Public safety infrastructure was strengthened with upgrades to the police department's training gun range. The SNAP and Double Up program were expanded, so now the city is well over $200,000 from under $20,000 a year for residents to have access to food. Parks and public spaces also saw enhancements, including repaving work at Gratwick Park and the installation of new Adirondack chairs for residents and visitors to enjoy. The citywide water meter replacement project, which involved installing digital water meters, is nearing completion. As part of the process, the city recovered well over $500,000 in previously unpaid water and sewer bills. The city's water and wastewater treatment plant also underwent improvements, including the purchase of a new digester, installation of new carbon piping, and electrical system upgrades. Tylik stated that the city achieved a major financial milestone when Moody's Investors Service officially upgraded the city's credit rating from A3 back to A2, restoring its pre-2020 status. The city also pursued additional development initiatives aimed at strengthening local businesses and generating increased revenue. A $3.2 million grant for Oliver Street streetscape enhancements is nearing completion, which included upgrading to green infrastructure, also related to addressing storm water issues and lighting upgrades. Webster Street improvements for $1 million was started. Lighting upgrades improves visibility at night. A new clock tower, more plants, better irrigation system make it a place that people can occupy and enjoy. You've been listening to Around Our Area, a weekly look at community newspapers from around Western New York. Stay tuned for our second hour. Your reader for this hour has been Bruce. Thank you for listening, and as always, make it a great day.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of our Southtowns papers, including Orchard Park, Hamburg, East Aurora, and West Seneca's B papers or Suns. At 3 o'clock, we have the Ample Eagle, and at 4 o'clock, we have the Grand Island Niagara County Tribune Sentinel. Stay tuned for these readings and more throughout the day, and contact us if you have comments, suggestions, or questions. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has broadcast almost 40 years of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another